Hi, I'm John Ed Mathison, and welcome to Go Getters and Go Givers. And hey, you're going to be blessed and challenged today. One of the great athletes from the state of Alabama is here, and he has a powerful story and a powerful ministry I want you to know about so that you can tag into it. Siran Stacy. Siran, thank you so much. You've just doing a lot of things. I heard you speaking to church yesterday.
Yes, sir.
And you're here, and then you're going to go out and teach golf this afternoon, or at least play in a golf tournament. But thank you so much for being a part of this podcast. And tell me, you grew up playing high school football, and then you went to the University of Alabama.
Yes, sir.
All-American.
Yes, sir.
Running back. And what coach did you play for?
I played up under my first year, Bill Curry, and my second and third year, Gene Stallings.
I tell you, right, and I was going to ask you if you ever had any bad losses, but y'all didn't lose very much.
We had one bad loss.
One bad loss, but very seldom. But you had a marvelous career at Alabama. Yeah. And set all sorts of records. Mm-hmm. And then you were drafted, I think, in the second round.
Yes, I was.
Philadelphia. Yeah. And tell me a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, well, it was, my dream was to play for the University of Alabama. I saw Paul Bear Bryant at an early age, 8 years old, down in Geneva, Alabama. I grew up in the bottom, and from there, I was being recruited by Ray Perkins, and I did not have the grades to go to Alabama out of high school, and he arranged, along with Mr. Steve Vickers and Dr. O.D. Mitchum. They were Alabama advocates, and they arranged for me to go out to Coffeyville, Kansas, and for 2 years. And 2 years I was out there, became one of the top running backs in the nation, and got recruited all over again. Ray Perkins actually had gone to the pros in between that time, and so I was kind of lost in the shuffle. But through people speaking up for myself, my name got back out there in the Alabama circle, and Coach Curry gave me an opportunity to come to the capstone.
And Coach Curry was a very godly man and a great coach,
yes.
And you had some really good training. Mm-hmm. Well, tell me, how did you become a Christian?
Yes, that's a great question. I grew up in small town Geneva, Alabama, in a place called The Bottom. And, New Bethel AME Methodist Church. That's where we would go every Sunday. And the preacher, around the age, 8 years old, the preacher was preaching a message, fire and brimstone, like heaven and hell. And I just sat there as a little boy, listening to his words, and said, I don't want to go to hell. And so I made a profession of faith at that age. Now, clearly, when I got out of, high school, went on into college, and particularly in Alabama, I did not live out my Christian's principles. I was a Christian, but I was a worldly Christian, if that's such a thing. I went to church, and I still, did, Bible things, but I did sinful things as well. So drinking, partying, sex, I did all those things.
Okay, and let me tell you, that's one of the biggest problems facing today, carnal Christians and people, like somebody said, they want to feel comfortable at a Bible study, but also a cocktail party. They want to be, wherever they're going, they want to be. But then later on, something happened in your life and changed your life.
Yeah, it did. I got married to the most amazing woman, Ellen Christina. Her maiden name was Bible, B-I-B-L-E. And Ellen and I, we started a family together. I had already had children prior to our marriage, and Ellen accepted all of my children. She was just a constant prayer warrior for me. I had a lot of things tied up inside of me as a man. And so, I still, even though I had the best woman in the world, I still did not live the life that the Word of God calls for men to live. And I was doing, at that time in my life, I was attending a church down in Destin, Florida called Destiny Worship Center, and Pastor Steve Regales, and I went on a lot of, Promise Keepers. I did an Emmaus walk. I was, Blue Lake, table, 180, table Paul, and, Blue Lake Walk 180. Excuse me. But so, and I was doing prison ministry with Bill Glass Prison Ministry, and I was working at the time, but I still, again, I wasn't free, from the demons. I wasn't free from the spirits that kept, just luring me into places that I should not have been. And so I lost Ellen. I lost our children, and my children that I had with a woman named Glenda Brown. She was my high school sweetheart, and so I had two girls with her before I got married to Ellen. And Lucretia and Sydney, they were 18-year-old. Lucretia was 18 and Sydney was 9. And Ellen and I had 3 children: Bronson, and who was 10, and little Ellie, who was 2, and Shelly at the time was 4. So the 7 of us was in the car together, and we were 1 mile away from our home in Newton, Alabama, right outside Wicksburg. And a drunk driver came and out of nowhere and struck us, and he killed Ellen, he killed Lucretia, he killed Bronson, Sydney, and little Ellie. And the 2 survivors that night was myself and Shelly. And Shelly was 4 years old at the time. And from there, John Ed, I ended up, going through some very, dark times. But in the midst of that darkness, I guess you could say the very bottom of it, is where I totally surrendered my life to Jesus. And it was a moment that I can recall even now. I was on my knees in that bathroom. I was weeping, and Shelly was coming up like, "Dad, don't cry." And I remember saying, I can't do it any longer. And I sat there and I just wept, and I asked the Lord, whatever I've done, forgive me. I just want the pain to go away. And the pain wasn't going away. But in the midst of all of this, that night on that floor in Newton, Alabama, I felt Jesus' presence. Something came in that bathroom, and I started a new walk. I started a new journey. And I was trying to do all the church things at that time. I heard people say all the stuff, which is, people said things to me that was so hurtful. And that's one of the things I've learned when people are going through tragedy. One of the worst things you can do is try to fix what they are going through, or try to say something to make them feel better. More times than not, what you're going to say is just going to make that person hurt even deeper. And I went through a lot of that. People say, "Well, why didn't you see the car coming?" You got what you deserve, or things, Then they just want to speak on God's behalf. God's not going to put more on you than you can bear, and all things work together for the good. And
that's hard to believe at that time.
Because they're not walking in my shoes, and they're not, dealing with the real time circumstances of a little girl begging for her mom to come home. And so in the midst of all of that, the saving grace of Christ came into my house out in Newton, Alabama. And so to answer your question that you asked me earlier, how did I come to Christ? I believe as a young boy, I think the Lord, heard me. I got baptized early at that New Bethel AME Methodist Church down there. But the journey along the way, I surrendered my life wholeheartedly at that moment. And Yes.
Well, I can look in your face and see you got a Methodist background somewhere, and just in watching you run with a football, you had to be a Methodist. And I've just been a big fan of yours. But let me tell you, there are probably thousands of folks watching this who are in that middle period, trying to please God partially, but pleasing the world. And that's a miserable place to have to live. And the Bible is very, very clear that there's one way to God through Jesus.
Yes, sir.
And you discovered in the darkest hour of your life that Jesus was there, and he forgave you, and he changed. I remember being with you a couple of times during that time, and just meeting you. But I tell you what, you are today are a new man.
Yes, sir.
You're a new person in Christ, and you have a huge, marvelous ministry.
Yeah.
I know, I like what you said. Some people say, I can't go to somebody like that. I don't know what to say. Saying something is not nearly as important as just being there.
Yes.
And somebody did, and I know you probably had some friends that you could count. They were just there.
Yes.
And they would hold you up. You know, back in the Old Testament, had to hold Joshua, hold your arms up.
Yes.
Everybody needs somebody.
Yes, we do.
To help hold up the arms.
Yes, they do.
And now you're engaged in that in such a powerful way.
Yeah.
And let's, in a few minutes, I want us to come back. We'll have a second segment to this.
Sir.
And I want you to share some things. At Alabama, when you were playing football, how was your faith? Was that a good place or a tough place? Or what's available in a college athletic program that's winning most all their games and is on top of the game? How does that affect your faith, and what options are there?
Yeah, well, it affects your faith tremendously because it's so big, and there's so many different opportunities. And there's so many different opportunities that's pulling for your time or pulling for you to be a part of their clique, their club. And, one of the great opportunities was the FCA, and we call him Dr. Wayne Atchison. And he was an advocate, he was, and I remember Coach Kroom, Coach Sylvester Kroom, and he was, an advocate, was constantly saying, spend time with the Lord, let's, pray. And then the other things, you're trying to find yourself. And a lot of people, when they go off to college, I could speak for myself, you're just trying to find where you fit, and even on that Alabama football team, I was trying to find, my place. And it's like, it's the grit, it's the grind. You got to earn it, right? You're not a part of it. You don't even if you're on the team, you're not a part of the team until that crimson jersey is on you and you're out there on that field. So I know I said a lot then, but you really have to pray, and you really have to ask the Lord to lead you accordingly, because there's so many things pulling for you.
I guess you probably know, a lot of listeners wouldn't, that Alabama has the longest running huddle group for Fellowship of Christian Athletes of any school, any huddle group in America.
Yes.
And Wayne Atchison, who is a very, very close friend, and I've done a lot with him through he and a couple of football players. And, people might be shocked. Do you know who the first speaker was at the first FCA meeting at Alabama? And Bear Bryant was for that.
Okay.
And he
who was
Bear
it?
Bryant. But first, let me tell you, Bear Bryant liked FCA because it made great for recruiting too. Mamas want their boys to be taken care of spiritually. But the first speaker was Billy Graham, which isn't a bad way to start right there. And when
it was going to
he
told me that.
It was going to be a great, and that was a marvelous time. Yeah. And I've had the privilege of going and speaking at the FCA group at the University of Alabama. Now, let me tell you what I learned. I remember when you go, they have the big study hall room. Now, I don't know if they had all this when you were there, but then they got this huge room with desk and everything, and the team, you can, it's on tiers, and you can teach so well. But that's where the FCA was. But you had the
it was there when I was there.
Okay, and you had the study hall over here. Well, I just asked, how many of the folks come? And they said, well, it's not mandatory,
Right.
but everybody comes. And I said, now, how do they do that? Well, I noticed at the study hall, the first guys they let up were the big defensive linemen, and they went up and just stood shoulder to shoulder and talked. And if you came out of the room, you either had to go through them or into the FCA room.
Yeah.
Everybody went in. Then they had another group of huge guys over here. You couldn't get out the door. Now, it wasn't mandatory.
Right.
But everybody came.
Yeah.
And that's been a powerful influence, and it had great influences there about it for FCA and about the Christian gospel. Well, now, we're going to take just a break, and
Yes,
then
sir.
when we come back, I want you to tell us what you would say to some young people today, how you live your life, what you'd say to some of us as adults. And I'd like you maybe to be thinking about what's one of the biggest moments you ever experienced athletically. And we're going to come back in a few minutes, and then we'll share that, and you'll share the gospel. And I heard you yesterday. Wow, you were powerful. If I wasn't a Christian man, I couldn't have gotten out of that room.
Thank you.
Without that. And,
What an
and what
honor.
you're doing. And I want you to tell us a little about your the ministry and how you're doing that. So
Yes, sir.
we're going to take a short break, and then
Okay.
we'll come back and follow up with that.
Thank you.